r/AskReddit. Married men of Reddit, what moment with your future wife made you think yup, I'm asking this girl to marry me? Short version, she literally saved my life. Less short version, I'm from Michigan. Back in December 2014, I was in Delaware for a business trip. I ended up getting food poisoning, which brought on DKA. For those non-diabetes, basically your blood gets poisoned and your body tries to fight it off, which proves to be futile. I was vomiting constantly and kept drifting in and out of consciousness. My wife, then girlfriend, called me about 20 or 30 times before I finally answered. The only thing I could force myself to say was, "Hi baby, I'm really sick." Then I blacked out again. What seemed like 5 minutes passed, which was actually about 13 hours, when I heard a banging on my hotel room door. I heard my girlfriend's voice yelling, "It's me. Let me in." I screamed as loud as I could, "Get in here. Get in here." Then I blacked out. I woke up in the hospital a day later. I found out that when I didn't answer the door, she ran downstairs, got a key, came up, and called an ambulance. The ambulance said that they would be there in 30 minutes. She said that's not soon enough. She put me into a rolling computer chair and pushed me to the elevator and out to her car, threw my near lifeless body in the backseat, and drove me to the hospital. When all was said and done, my body had a blood sugar level of 1400, my normal range is 110, 140, and my white blood cell count was around 3000. I'm not 100% about this number, but I know it was high. My wife sat with me for 6 days in the hospital, sleeping in the chair next to me, left to eat, but came right back. She didn't leave my side. I should also mention that this was only 4 months after we started dating. However, we had been friends for a few years before this. I found out later that if she would have waited for the ambulance, I would not have made it. She literally saved my life. She sacrificed her time, risked getting fired, and failing classes to drive 13 hours from Michigan to Delaware to take care of me. Once it all hit me as to what she had done, I was completely speechless and realized that if this girl is willing to do something like this for me, I must be pretty fucking special to her. I made it a priority once I recovered to ask her mother and father for their blessing, which they both gave me. I married her in May 2016. One of the scariest things to ever happen to me ended up showing me my girlfriend's devotion and love for me. We just hit our 1-year anniversary, and although we are a young couple, we are still kicking ass and going strong. Have to post this for my dad. My parents met 39 years ago last Friday in a Linux for a movie. My mom's friend knew my dad from another friend and introduced them. My dad was known as a wild guy, and my mom was seriously considering becoming a nun. Naturally, they started dating. Couple months later, my mom found a lump in her breast. My dad's aunt died of breast cancer very young, and it just freaked him out, I guess. My mother had the lump removed, and thank God it was benign, but my dad had already rushed out and bought an engagement ring. He always claims he knew from the moment he saw her, but a couple of glasses of wine and he will tell you that he saw what life could be like without her, and it wasn't worth living. They never fight, they always work together, and my mom's heart still skips a beat when he comes home from work. Probably too late, but whatever. I had just left a job I hated because I was leaving for grad school in my desired field. I only had a couple of months left chilling at home and doing some volunteer work before leaving. I told myself, there is no reason to get involved with any women. There will be smart girls aplenty in grad school, and you do not want to get into some kind of long distance relationship. So of course we met in late May, first date in June. Things were going well enough that I asked if she'd be willing to road trip 22 hours with me to school, and she offered to pay for her own one-way ticket back home. We were locked in a car together for 2 days, and when I dropped her off at the airport in Florida, I still wanted to hang out with her. That's when I knew. 2 years of long distance dating, many flights on budget airlines, but we celebrated our first wedding anniversary this past spring. I got into a doctorate program last fall. She made that road trip with me for that too, but no need to buy the return ticket that time. I asked my husband, and he said it was about a year into our relationship. He says, right after we moved to and I woke up in the middle of the night with an arrhythmia. Even though you had to work the next day, and it was 2 AM, you calmly suggested we go to the ER just to be sure. You talked to the doctors, asked questions, rubbed my feet, you hate feet, and did everything to keep me calm. You were my advocate, and made sure I got taken care of. I knew then that I wanted to be with you forever. I felt very loved and proud that you were mine. It turns out he had mild sleep apnea. He didn't snore, so I had no idea, and when his brain would shoot adrenaline into his system after not breathing for a second, it would totally fuck up the electrical system in his heart, causing an atrial fibrillation. It hasn't happened since he got a CPAP shortly after this episode. Glad we went to the doctor, because he told me it had happened before. AFib can cause clots to form in the heart because the blood doesn't always fully exit the ventricles and can lead to stroke. Sleep apnea is no joke, people. That was in September 2014. He proposed in April 2015, and we've been married since August 2016. Our first baby is due in 2 weeks. It's a boy. I actually have a picture I took of her the moment I realized it. Nothing in particular happened. We had been dating for a while and went on vacation together. When we arrived at the resort, we were sitting on the veranda having a drink and it just hit me. This is the girl I'm going to marry. So I immediately took her picture. The look on her face is sort of like, why are you looking at me like that? I realize this is buried and nobody will see it, and it's not a cool or funny story, but I wanted to put in my answer to be archived on the interwebs forever. I just love that girl so much. Edit. You people are awesome. I posted this in the morning, and I just checked my phone and saw all the upvotes, and I had to go find the pic. It took some looking. It was on an old backup drive. The pic is from 2005. Here it is, my beautiful girl. This is on the veranda of the street. Regis Mardeval on Mallorca. At the time it was just the Mardeval. Looking at this reminds me she was wearing my sweatshirt because it was a little chilly in the late afternoon. It wasn't, but she gets cold when it isn't at least 75°F. She is looking at the guidebook and map. Now that I look at the picture after all these years, the late afternoon golden light, in retrospect, might have been conspiring to influence me. Something about her at that very moment made it clear that she was the girl I was going to spend the rest of my life with. It's been 10 wonderful years. Thank you, great people, for encouraging me to dig this out and relive this moment. Things were going really well, and I was saying to myself, if this keeps up, I think next summer I'll pop the question. Then, my mother had a stroke. We were all sitting in the waiting area outside the ICU, because only 2 people were allowed in at a time. It was my now wife's birthday, and a Wednesday, and she didn't hesitate to take the day off, to sit with me and my family. I went to visit my father at home, and she came with me. Her Italian instincts kicked it, and she brought a load of groceries and a lasagna with her. My father was a mess at the hospital, and it fell on me and my siblings to speak with the doctors and make plans. I would get home and pour myself some bourbon. She made me dinner and just sat with me while I silently sobbed. It wasn't about how great we were when things were good, it was about how perfect she was when things were bad. I bought the ring 2 months later. Edit. Forgot. This all happened just before Christmas. Since my mother was still in the hospital Christmas Eve, I got a last-minute reservation to my father's favorite restaurant. GF was with her family, but we got to the table to find a note that she had called ahead to buy us 2 bottles of wine. My then girlfriend and I had gotten into a huge fight. We were doing long distance at the time as she was going to school 2.5 hours away from where I was going to school. We were planning on going to school in the same place after that semester, but we had only been dating for a few months. The fight was about a lot of things, but it was one of those fights that are so bad that both parties were constantly in tears and questioning everything about oneself. She decided she wanted to drive down to come see me so that we could talk as soon as possible. When I was driving to the Chili's, we decided to meet her to eat and talk. I was so angry and upset about some of the things she said to me and the things I said to her. I didn't know how this would work out. We pulled into the parking lot around the same time and we both got of our cars. We just looked at each other and ran towards one another and gave each other the biggest hugs, both crying. In that moment I knew I wanted to marry her. I knew no matter how bad it would get, I would always just want to be with her. We worked out the fight within minutes. I proposed a month later. Now we have been married for a year and it's been the happiest year of my life. My best friend and I took forever to realize that we each were infatuated with one another. Embarrassingly so. Finally, we started dating and we moved in together. Everything was perfect. I've never been big on the idea of marriage, but laying in bed together one night I realized that the thought of not having her in my life was unbearable, and I didn't want to ever let her slip away. We had only been together for about 6 weeks at that point, but I knew I wanted her to be mine. She died a couple weeks ago, and I never got to ask her to marry me. Edit. Wow. I never expected nor really desired this much attention. I just wanted to vent a little while I was on break at work. Honestly, I have some anxiety about all of this attention. I'll try and get back to everyone. To answer the most common question, she died in a car accident. I don't want to post a lot of detail publicly, but if anyone really gives a shit, PM and ask, and I'll share more. It's been really hard to deal with this. I cannot put into words how important she was to me. For someone like myself, if the username didn't give it away, I don't particularly enjoy most people. She was my absolute favorite. The best person in my life. The joy we had for each other was immeasurable and everyone who knew us together knew we were soulmates. That's where all the feelings of pointlessness are stemming from. Anyway, I could ramble on forever. I'll try and get some replies knocked out. Thank you for listening to a random internet stranger try and express his pain. Edit 2. Keep your religion and blessings to yourself. It only serves to make me angry. All other messages are welcome. We've been together 8 years and currently planning our wedding, but I remember the day I knew like it was yesterday. Genuinely, I knew on our very first date, we'd worked together and spoken at work, including sending emails which we would probably get fired for now. Mainly she insulted my intelligence and told me she was going to fuck my mother. Anyway, it was our first date. We met at a pub around 1 PM and the date went on for about 12 hours. We drank, we laughed, and very quickly I realized this was different. I was completely at ease. I'd never laughed so much on a date. As it went on, we had a competition to see who could hug the most old people, for instance 70 plus, which to this day she likes reminding me that she won, and we even sorta picked baby names which 8 years later are still the names we plan on giving our children. Every day I'm thankful for the beautiful woman I had, a very long, somewhat drunken, by the end at least, first date. She's genuinely made me a better person. She's stood by me during the lost years, how we now refer to my depression. She's given me the drive to do better in life. I was a useless, lazy 23-year-old with no real prospects, and now we both have good careers and our own house. Even just the though of that moment, where I become her husband, makes me feel giddy and excited for the rest of our lives. Not married yet, but will be getting engaged sometime later this year. I've probably known I was going to marry her since I was in high school, but I think the moment that solidified it to me was in college. We have been dating each other for over 10 years, if you can count middle school dating as official, which we do, and we have only really been apart for about a year when we were both freshmen in college. We took a break to see what the single life was all about and grow as people when we were both away from home. I can't completely speak for her, but it wasn't the best time either of us had. Did a little dating in that time, but never really stopped thinking about each other. After the year ended, we decided to get back together after a pretty emotional get together. Our sophomore year we had some speed bumps, but it was one of the first times I specifically remember knowing for a fact that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. We were laying on my bed in my apartment just watching some Netflix, and we both fell asleep. I woke up first and remember looking down at her and just getting this feeling that I couldn't let her go again. Now it is 4 years later, we have been living together for almost 6 months now, and I'm going to be buying a ring sometime in the next few weeks. No one is going to see this, but oh well. This isn't flashy, it's not going to make an amazing Hollywood movie. The moment I knew I was going to ask her to marry me was the moment I accepted that I could live without her. I just didn't want to. It was that moment that I recognized being with her was a mutual choice, not a dependency. I had the self-awareness to know I could lead a happy life. But shit, this woman made everything happier. I'm one of the most genuinely lucky people I know. I'm not the wealthiest, best looking, or most popular, but I deeply, deeply love my wife. She is the center of my universe. It's not because she's given me this Hollywood fairy tale of what marriage is supposed to be like. It's because she's given me something real, something tangible, and something I can fight for. Through the ups and downs, the arguments and laughter, the sickness and health, I realize that I may not always like her, but I deeply love her. And that love is not based on one thing, but all things. And it's amazing when you see the woman you love day after day, year after year, and you just keep seeing the same person you first met. I shit you not. Every single day, I have this revelation. No matter how amazing or frustrating of a day I have, every day I would ask her to marry me, and every day I would marry her again. Wife, if you ever read this, here is another confession I make before Reddit. The internet is forever, as is my love for you. Update just because. Tonight I went home and hugged my wife, and I held on as long as she let me. She smiled, swatted my butt, and said good game. Then she started humming while holding our kid. Humming is how my wife expresses a moment of bliss. To all the people that took the time to read my post, to those kind enough to comment, I humbly offer you my deepest thanks. You, people of Reddit, gave my wife some happiness today. You owned that. You made my day. Thank you. Not married yet, but the wedding is this August. We met on Match.com and talked for 3 weeks before we met in person. I was too shy to ask her out, so she asked me and we met up. The first restaurant was fully booked, so we went down the street to a small cafe. Again, I was super shy, so during dinner I didn't talk a lot. I was so worried she didn't like me, but we both knew from talking through messaging that there was more to the other person. So we decided to take a walk around town after dinner. That's where I really started feeling more comfortable, and we talked and walked for hours. At the end of the date we didn't hug or kiss, but she said I had fun, we should do this again. That was the best first date I'd ever had. I knew from there that she was special because I just felt so comfortable and relaxed when I was with her. That weekend after the first date she went to Florida, where her younger brother lives, to go to Disney with him, so I had to wait 2 weeks, but it was worth it. We went out again and eventually started going out weekly. Then we started seeing each other twice per week. After dating for about 8 months we started to talk about where this was going long term. We were both 29 and felt we are both mature, so we talked about marriage and life together, how we would raise our families and work together to pay off our student loans. We talked about kids and what type of parents we'd want to be. I remember after each date, when I was driving home, I told myself that I knew she was the one, that I loved her, and that I wanted to spend my life with her. It wasn't just one thing that made me feel that way, it was getting to know her as a person. I saw how caring, loving and patient she could be. I learned about the charity work and giving that she did, how she put others before herself. So one day in January I bought an engagement ring. It wasn't a huge ring, but I knew it was the right one when I first saw it. I went to her house, sat her down on the couch, and in my introverted dorkiness said, Probably not these exact words. I think you knew this was coming for a while. I'm super nervous and hope you like this ring. So will you marry me? She said yes. After that we went down the street and got tequila at Gyros and went back to her place. She called a few family members and sent pictures of the ring to a few people. Then we ate our dinner and watched Spice World because that's totally us. We are getting married this August. We went to see Iron Man 2 together for my birthday. We had been broken up for months and were just hanging out as friends. It was my birthday, so she treated me to the movie. When we sat down in the theater, she pulled a package of peanut butter M&Ms out of her purse. My absolute favorite candy of all time. She remembered what my favorite candy was after months of not being together. I knew in that moment that a girl that thoughtful, caring, kind, and sweet is someone really special. That was when I decided to marry her. We were married 6 months later. 2 children later, and I still feel the same way. Usually. Edit. Considering everyone wants to know why we broke up, it was pretty simple. I was ready at that time for marriage and she didn't know if she was yet. She wanted to date some other people to know if our relationship was really what she wanted for the rest of her life, or if she wanted to go to school or date around for a long time, etc. I totally understood and supported her decision to figure herself out, and when we started seeing each other again, it all fell right into place and we were both ready to take the plunge. It was the right decision for both of us to break up and get back together after some time apart, and we valued the relationship so much more because of it. When I jokingly, although it was a bold decision to go that far, that soon with a girl I had just met, called her a cunt. I'm British. If you're from Essex, England, you know what I mean. It can accidentally, playfully slip out, as we left the bar, that I went to her with from the hostel with a group of friends whilst traveling in China. As I said this, we were just through the door out into the street, and I felt such pain and confusion out of nowhere. Turns out she slapped me hard. I was delirious and couldn't hear anything except a loud ringing. My vision went. I was vulnerable. Then, out of nowhere, a Russian guy standing next to us had seen the whole thing. He said, in a thick Russian accent, maybe you should kiss him and make up for such hard slap. So I stood there and just like that, she kissed me. And it was one passionate raunchy kiss, from what I remember. So we stop, and I begin walking to the next bar to meet the friends who had moved on by this point. Then, I hear Joey, are you coming? In a sexy American Californian accent, and being British, I love that. She's standing next to a taxi she had just hailed with the door opened. Needless to say, I went to breakfast with her the next morning. We are getting married in a month. Thanks Russian guy. So not exactly married, but nearly counts, and I wanted to share with Reddit. I met my wife online in 2009. She was a writer on fanfiction.net, and I was just a reader who liked writing reviews of things I liked. Eventually we moved from just speaking through reviews to speaking constantly. After a year of that, we realized that we both liked each other enough to date. Neither of us had any experience with dating others. You may have surmised this from the website name, but we knew the connection was too important to give up. Soon after that, I left for basic. She didn't have a car, and she still lived with overbearing parents, but she wrote me letters in secret and smuggled them to the post office on foot. She only managed a few, but each one made me cry for hours. When I was in training, she finally went to college, which meant that we could Skype. I had talked to her a little before on the phone, but being able to video call was a whole different experience. In late 2011, I think, I was finally able to get leave to go visit her. We were uncertain and nervous. We'd never met in person before, and there was a slim but awful chance that one of us was faking. But I finally met her outside her dorm room. We spent the weekend together, and at the end of it, we were devastated to part again. That's when I knew I had to be with her. We kept meeting twice a year, one long trip at spring break, and one shorter one in October, every year. One year I finally got to meet her family. Finally, in 2014, we met with my family for a week in Cancun. I proposed on the beach there. We discussed it beforehand. She knew it was coming. She agreed, of course. I separated from the Air Force in late 2014 and started college at the same college she was attending in early 2015. We tried for about a week to take it slow, but once we were together, we couldn't sleep apart. I moved in with her after 2 weeks. We were finally married 17 days ago, after 4 years of long distance relationships and 3 years of living together. We are perfect together. I was in Hawaii for a training exercise for the National Guard, where she was stationed for the Navy. We met at the All Hands Club on base due to both playing Warcraft. We stayed until the bar turned on the lights. Then we sat on the beach until 3 in the morning talking about everything you're not supposed to when you first meet someone. Politics, religion, etc. When we went back to her place we stayed up for another few hours talking before she took me to bed. I had a free day off, so she took me around the island. We cold left it there. Honestly, I don't think either of us were expecting anything, especially since there was a distinct difference in ranks, but I asked for her number. From the night I got back I fell asleep every night talking to her on FaceTime. Everyone else saw it before I did. I was crazy about her, but I didn't see how the logistics would work. A friend prodded me that she would marry me if I asked, so I asked if she would, joking. She hesitated and eventually said yes. We had only spent a day and a half in person together at this point. She got a job offer stateside right before she retired and asked if I wanted to come with her, and I said yes. Eventually it was medical issues that prompted us to get married for insurance reasons, but it was inevitable. It was going to happen. We just celebrated 5 years together, and I can't imagine a better partner. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.